Look, I want to be very, very clear here. Indiana did not get lucky last night. New York blew that game. First of all, they were better without Jalen Brunson in there. They had built a 17-point lead without him. But when Brunson came back in, he got into foul trouble. And at the end of the game, he was absolutely sloppy with the inbound plays, dang near losing the basketball on several occasions when he was dribbling it, trying to do too much by himself. He was not clutch last night. And look, I understand it's not a play on him being Mr. Clutch. But the reality is this. Number one, if you're New York, you above everybody should know how to keep a lead at the end of a basketball game because you've seen so many of them blown. They got lazy. They blew that game. You can say that it was a lucky basket all you want to, but Indiana's not in that position to begin with if the Knicks do their job and they close out the game. It was a mismanagement use of timeouts, fouls, everything about the way that game ended in the last 2.5 minutes for the Knicks were symptomatic of how they played most basketball games this season, including the playoffs in the first 3 quarters. That was who they were in the last 2.5 minutes of that game. They got exposed for who they really are last night. And I hate the term, they stole a home game. They didn't steal anything. Indiana took it because they never gave up. That is literally all there is to that. Now, I'm not saying that Jalen Brunson's not a good basketball player. I'm not saying that Jalen Brunson shouldn't have been a candidate for MVP this year. I'm not saying any of those things. I'm not even saying that Jalen's not clutch. What I'm saying is last night, he was everything but. Oh, he still did this. Oh, he still that. Look, a lot of guys are going to get their numbers no matter what. They were bad in the last 2.5 minutes. And I'm not taking away anything from Indiana. They deserve credit because they never gave up. And you should have stuck with the defense that got you there because all of a sudden they were lighting it up from the perimeter all over again. The way that Indiana began that game is how they finished that game. They showed that they were the better team last night, and they were the better team in overtime. Now, that was last night. I'm not talking about what's going to happen the next time that they play. Specifically, this is how it went down last night. And if I'm a Knicks fan, honestly, I'm thinking to myself, here we go again. I'm just going to be let down all over again. Everybody's been talking about us, right? Especially ESPN because that's where they are. They're right next door in Connecticut. So, of course, the New York media, ESPN, and everybody else that's over there, national news, what are they all talking about? The way they absolutely drummed Boston. What they're not talking about is the inability to probably keep up that pace. What they're not talking about is how dog tired they looked at the end of that game. What they're not talking about is how lazy they got at the end of that game. What they're not going to be talking about, I'm telling you, Indiana set a pace that I don't think the Knicks can keep up with. New York needs to play their game, which is slow it down. You do not want to try and play the racetrack meet that Indiana wants to set with you every single game. You don't want to do that with them. Man, you got to fall back into a zone defense. You got to rotate. You got to do 2-1-2 high traps. You got to put a lot of pressure on that offense. You can never get comfortable around the Pacers. And that is exactly what New York did. They got comfortable. Man, we're just kicking it. It's fine. There's only a couple minutes left to go. We're up by 14. It ain't happening. We're good. This is just Boston. No worries, amigo. We could just lay down and chill out. Wrong. That's exactly what it looked like. And I don't think mentally the Knicks can keep up if that pace is going to be set over and over again. Now, if they slow it down and they play their game, they still have a chance to win this series. But everybody knows that a Tom Thibodeau basketball team is defense first, which is something that they decided they weren't going to be anymore when they traded Randall. And Randall's doing fine. He's having triple doubles and all that in Minnesota. He's good. He's had some really bad plays, don't get me wrong. But overall, I would take what he's been doing in Minnesota over what's going on in New York right now. New York was right place, right time this year. I'm not taking away from who they were, but it's the reality of it. Tatum got hurt. Boston was just not quite the same team. Defensively, they were amazing. That's where it starts. And come on, man. Everybody heard Van Gundy. Did these two make a deal with each other at the beginning of the game to not guard one another? Man, I'd be irritated. I'm going to tell you that right now. But honestly, at the end of the day, Thibodeau doesn't have anybody to blame but himself. When you're in that situation, you rally the troops. If you're up by 14 with like a minute to go and you're doing what they did, maybe. But, man, they choked that game away, and that's all there is to it. So the Tush push, it's still a thing. To the 22 teams that voted nay, you're all soft. I'm a little surprised at Washington, to be honest with you. I know that they're in the same division as Philly, but the fact that they voted it away, I personally thought that everybody in that organization was just a step above. But, you know, it is what it is. Here's the thing. The NFL can say whatever they want to about injuries. The reality is they skew the numbers in order to justify their financial means. That's all there is to it. You got to understand, these guys, they are no longer, he's not Patrick Mahomes. Hell, he's not even looked at as an athlete anymore. He's looked at as a $500 million investment / liability. Because I've invested this money into you, I expect a return, and if I can't get that return, then you've become a financial liability. And you're a financial liability if you are hurt. Because I am losing ticket sales, I am losing jersey sales, I am losing everything. Everything that I get revenue-wise, if you go down and you can't play anymore, that's it. Your career is done. I lose everything. I lose bonuses for the playoffs. I lose TV money and TV time. I lose sponsorship deals. Everybody starts pulling back. I lose everything if I'm an NFL owner. That's exactly what this is. So with the Tush push even being there, it's not about whether or not it's fair. And all these guys can make jokes all they want to, like the Bears head coach. Well, I'm this guy, and to me, that play is whatever your reasoning is, Brody. You go right on ahead of me. Go. I don't care what your reasoning is. We all know that at the end of the day, you are trying to protect your players from getting hurt, which I understand. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't get it and that I don't want anybody to get hurt, but the NFL skews the numbers in order to justify their means. And a perfect example is the hip drop tackle. The NFL tried telling everybody that you have a 20 to 25% increase possibility of getting hurt with the hip drop tackle. What they did was they skewed the numbers. They didn't use the amount of tackles that happened that season, which was over 17,000, and the fact that only 239 of them reportedly were hip drop tackles, which means it's a play that happens 1.31% of the time. 1%. What they did was they manipulated you by going, well, it's 20 to 25%. How'd they get that number? They used the amount of players that could start every single week in the NFL. 393 players? That was the number that they used. Not the amount of tackles, the amount of players. To get an accurate number, you would use the amount of times that it actually happened, then you would use the amount of injuries that actually happened. And when we use the amount of injuries that happen, it's literally less than 1%. You have a less than 1% chance of suffering an injury, specifically a big injury, which would be like season-ending, career-ending, etc., with the hip drop tackle. It looks worse than it is when it actually happens. But it's the NFL, and an injury can happen anytime. If you don't believe me, ask Joe Burrow. If you don't believe me, ask Teddy Bridgewater, Von Miller, a host of guys who have all been hurt just by doing their summer camps. I mean, everybody remembers Teddy Bridgewater in that first year with Minnesota and how heartbroken people were because you saw the potential of his career and he went down before the season even began. Let that sink in. But, it's all hip drop tackles. And even then, what we saw last season with it, it was like, okay, that's hip drop. Why are we not throwing the flag? This thing is banned. All of a sudden, everything is referee's discretion. So that tells me that the officiating crew doesn't even necessarily agree with the hip drop tackle being banned. So for my money, whenever the NFL says we're going to do something and we're going to do it because we care about player safety, and that's what we're going to shroud this all in, I'm going to start to look deeper because I know that what's really going on is something much, much different. That's legitimately what it is. I don't blame them. Look, man, if I spend $500 million on somebody, I'm probably going to do whatever I can to protect that investment too. To a lot of people, it makes more sense to go out and get an offensive line, or at least an offensive line coach that's worth their salt. But simultaneously, those same people are probably going to tell you it also doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense to pay somebody $500 million. Can anybody really show me where Brock Purdy is worth nearly $300 million? Do you really think Brock Purdy's worth $300 million? When we go and we look at that football team, especially from their Super Bowl run, we can look at that and go, anytime Christian McCaffrey had a bad game, Brock Purdy struggled too, and the 49ers would lose. Then we can look at coaching in the Super Bowl, and we could go, this is a repeat of Shanahan doing what he did in Atlanta, inability to close out a game coaching-wise. Same thing he did again when they were back in the Super Bowl and they were up. Granted, guys were open. Jimmy G missed the throws. Still incredibly risk plays. Then you're riding C-Mac all the way down to the goal line, and what do? You start throwing the football again. The inability to close out games, not understanding overtime rules, not having anything in preparation after you've been in overtime already. We could look at coaching, and then we could also look and go, Brock Purdy's probably a system QB. And we could also say he's losing pieces around him right now. And C-Mac, look, everybody knows what he's capable of when he's healthy. When he's healthy. When he's healthy, he's the best player on that football team. When he's injured, they're in trouble. Despite all the talent that was still there, they were in trouble. And even then, guys were getting hurt last year. Brock Purdy was forced into winning games all by himself, and he couldn't get it done, and they paid him anyway. Everybody was complaining, oh, man, these guys in NIL money, they're making more money than Brock Purdy, and he's been to a Super Bowl, and he's been to an NFC championship game. And let's not forget that win streak started when Jimmy G was the quarterback. I'm just saying. And where's Jimmy G now? So we have to put things in perspective and in logic. But even then, the point is, now that they've paid him that money, they have to protect their investment. And here's the thing. It's not just about on the field. And I've said this 100 times. It's not just on the field what you're worth. It's off the field too. It's the jersey sales. It's the fact that Patrick Mahomes can go somewhere where a team is 3-10 and they might sell out because people want to see Patrick Mahomes play. That's what's up. It's the fact that they're going to get in big sponsorship deals. They're going to generate more revenue via television. They're going to generate more revenue now on the apps like Amazon and all these apps that they're using, Peacock and everything else, in order to generate money. That's literally what it amounts to. Because a lot of what the NFL's money making is media. Generating billions of dollars literally in media revenue. Hell, back in 2017 alone, the NFL was primed to make $14 billion, if I remember correctly. That was just in media revenue. That's excluding everything else. So you wonder why the rules are being pushed the way that they are? This is why. But the Tush push has been around forever. There's been a variation of it in some form since the 1920s. And back then what they would do is the quarterback, though, would be almost like a wing. He'd be behind the tackle. And then he'd have the halfback back there, which, by the way, there are still some teams that use that formation today. And he'd have the halfback or the fullback, and then they would do a direct snap, and then everybody would just push the line. Or they would hand it to the quarterback, or they'd hand it to the halfback or whatever, and then everybody would just push. Now, somebody is going to go, well, back then, they had spikes, and they did. I mean, literally, they were allowed to WWE leg drop somebody with their spikes. I mean, don't get me wrong, the rules were skewed, but the principle is really more about, is this fair than anything else? And, of course, a potential of injury. Some people don't see it as fair because the defense can't push that way. Well, the defense gets to push all the time. They get to bull rush offensive linemen and pass pro who have to back up. They're not allowed to go forward in pass protection, which is why offensive linemen love run blocking so much, because they can actually use strength on strength at that point. They get to go downhill. So with their thighs and all that and the hand checking, the offensive line technically has leverage on any run play. Whereas on pass plays, the defense has the leverage. So tit for tat. It is what it is. Me personally, I think you can obviously see I don't agree with it being banned. I think you need to figure out how to stop it, because it's literally all about positioning. It's about who's getting lower than the other guy. So you're going to have to figure out how to get lower. Once you do that, you're going to control the line of scrimmage. And it doesn't always work. It just works a lot. I'm just saying. I mean, there's plays that, believe it or not, the wide receiver pass and all that stuff. I mean, these plays have been around for literally over 100 years. I'm not saying that just because something's been around for a long time doesn't mean it should stick around. I'm just saying that now it's suddenly a discussion. And what are they using? The age-old, well, we want to protect our guys. You're full of it, man. Just want to protect your financial investment. Just say that. And that'd be a lot easier. But, they know people aren't going to buy that. It's going to make them mad. What do you mean it's all about money? Everything is about money, man. Don't you know that? Nothing is free in this world, Brody. Nothing. Everything comes with some sort of price. I'm just saying. All right, everybody. I am Drew Duncan. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. And wherever you're listening to podcasts, simply tell your device to play the Drew Duncan Sports Show. TikTok, the RL Drew Duncan. YouTube is the same. Everybody stay safe, take care of yourselves, and have a wonderful rest of your night and or day.